When a car tears out, it leaves behind skid marks. But what does a UFO leave behind? We're going back more than 50 years for this first one, and what's been called some of the most credible UFO evidence of all time. November 2nd, 1971. It's evening in the small town of Delphos, Kansas. 16-year-old Ron Johnson is on his family farm when he suddenly sees a bright mushroom-shaped spacecraft hovering nearby. Johnson runs to his parents, and they return just in time to see the craft disappearing in the sky. But back on the ground, they find this. Where the UFO allegedly hovered is an 8-foot-wide ring with a whitish crust around the edge. And take a closer look. It looks like this ring is glowing. Harlan Inlow was one of the first law enforcement officers to arrive on the scene.
It was a eye-opening surprise. Here's this white, dry ring, looks like a big donut, sitting in the middle of a mud field. We took statements, we photographed it, and we took actual soil samples.
Ron's mother, Irma Johnson, tells Harlan she touched the white substance, and instantly her fingers became numb. Meanwhile, 2 other eyewitness reports of the UFO that night are soon confirmed, leading Harlan to only one conclusion.
I am 100% convinced that an incident happened, and the way the family told us was credible.
But it doesn't end there. Journalist MJ Benaya says when it comes to reported UFO landing sites, these strange sightings are not unique to Kansas.
We have multiple cases that show UFOs sort of landing on the ground. One of the most famous cases was out of the 1980s in France, in Aix-en-Provence, where a gentleman was farming in his field when he saw this large disc-like object take off into the sky. And again, it left impression marks as to where it was landed, as well as some burn marks on the ground.
With a 21-page soil report, the Delphos, Kansas UFO is considered one of the most lab-studied UFO cases in history. So you'd think if it was possible to explain this ring, it would have been done by now. But no dice. Well, we got our experts here to give it another try. We begin with astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio.
UFOs have been traditionally associated with heat, meaning this might have been ash, but there wasn't an excess of carbon ash that I could see in the chemical report. Some of the elements were hydrophobic in nature.
It's that hydrophobicity that tells physicist Dr. Matthew Shadagas something's up.
The term hydrophobic means water repellent. Most soil really needs water. That's how plants grow.
This photo, taken of the Delphos soil sample about 20 years after the incident, shows a drop of water repelling off it. So there seems to be something amiss in the soil, but is it really glowing? D'Antonio thinks there's an explanation in the camera.
It looks brighter on the film precisely because it's a brighter soil compared to the darker soil, and the camera tries to balance the light.
But Shadagas says a camera artifact doesn't explain further research from the soil report.
We have physical deposited evidence that the samples still have the same glowing property today, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me.
The evidence is leaning alien, but geologist Dr. Bob Anderson thinks what we're looking at is natural, a mix of an unknown organism and water creating a froth of bacteria.
I realize that this area is pretty conducive to this kind of thing, so I don't believe it has anything to do with the UFO. I think it's a natural phenomena of groundwater interaction in biology. It's a gas that's being released by that bacteria.
But what about the numbness in the mother's hand? Dr. Anderson thinks he can explain that too.
The mother got her hand burnt a little bit by touching that ring. That usually happens if you have an acid. It wouldn't surprise me that something got into the groundwater. My gut feeling is that there was something buried in that area that was man-made chemical, which would not show up on those 1970 soil surveys.
But still, why the ring shape? Dr. Shadagas points to another popular theory, that we're looking at a so-called fairy ring. They're typically formed by fungus feeding on decomposing matter in the soil. The fungus then grows from the center outwards to form a ring.
Fairy rings are also known to have a hydrophobic effect on the soil. So this does appear to be a partial explanation that knocks out 1 or 2 features, but doesn't seem to fit the entire story.
From a fairy ring to a possible UFO landing and even acidic soil, there were just so many conflicting theories here, plus all those credible witnesses. Our verdict is that this is simply an unexplained phenomenon. Before you get any ideas to investigate, you should know that the family eventually buried the ring to discourage curious trespassers. But if you ever come across one yourself, you know who to call.
February 2020. It's a sunny afternoon in Garden Grove, California. Typically, when Brian Schuler's kids tell him they've seen a UFO, he credits it to overactive imaginations. But on this particular day, when his son beckons him into the backyard, Brian also sees something strange. And he records this.
What is that?
An object floats in the sky overhead, consisting of two connected, metallic-looking shapes with a dark underside. And for the first time, Brian can't explain it away to his kids.
Looked like it had almost a glass front on it, and I couldn't tell what it was on the top. It moved towards my left side very slowly and then past us, and it just moved in a very straight line out of distance.
Although the sighting leaves Brian perplexed, maybe he shouldn't be. Writer Amy Tidal explains Southern California's Orange County is historic when it comes to sightings of unidentified flying objects in broad daylight.
Orange County has one of the oldest daytime UFO sightings. In 1965, road maintenance engineer Rex Heflin saw what he thought was a UFO, so he whipped out a camera and shot some quick Polaroids of the object. Heflin initially brushed off what he saw, assuming that it was some kind of test by a nearby military base. But years later, experts looked at the photographs and confirmed that it wasn't some government technology. Both of these objects appear to be flying low in the sky. They were both sighted near telephone poles and near power lines, and they were seen roughly in the same area. So some might believe that there is a link between these two sightings.
The Heflin case was one of the most talked about UFO incidents of the 1960s. And when high-resolution prints of the original Polaroid pictures were reanalyzed 35 years later using the latest in digital technology, there were no indications of any tampering. Now, will the same be said of our backyard UFO? Let's see what the experts have to say.
It was determined back in the 1960s that the object in Rex Heflin's photo wasn't military technology. But what about this one? If so, it's in the wrong direction.
There's Los Alamitos. The joint base is completely behind him. It's in the exact 180 degrees behind that individual, looking out to where the object is.
So could this be a drone used for military purposes?
I don't think that it's going to be a drone at all. It's not a symmetrical object. And besides that, it's flying next to a power line. Yeah, that wouldn't be too cool. That's too close.
Okay, so no drone. But Hoffman does believe that the power line is a clue.
When you zoom in on it, you can clearly see that it has body parts and everything in it possibly hanging like a thread. I think it's a spider that's hanging from that line.
So we've got a spider. Mystery solved. But not quite. Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio respectfully disagrees.
I think based on the fact that if you look at the clarity of this wire and how this isn't really that clear, what that means is this object is substantially further away than the wire. And the giveaway is that when we look at the video, you see insects flying around the wire. It's like those black gnats are flying around. This thing is much further away than that. So this here would be much bigger than that if it was an insect, but there's no visible corollary for this being any kind of animal whatsoever. Not even a soaring bird like a vulture that might circle in the air.
So what is it? Brian told us as he filmed, he didn't think it moved like a balloon. But D'Antonio says, not so fast.
And it looks like it's just floating there, but the thing is just gently coming toward the wire. And I believe where we have something that's floating lazily along in the sky, it looks to me like a mylar balloon. From the reflectivity down to the motion and the shape. The helium inside the balloon will eventually leak out, and you'll get these little creases and convolutions and changes in the brightness, and that could be what we're seeing here.
D'Antonio believes it's likely the balloon spelled out a word and strayed from an outdoor party.
This looks like it could be an H, but I see a lot of cases of these silver mylar balloons that get away. And I agree, it's odd looking. It's really odd looking.
Our verdict, we're going with partially deflated Mylar balloon. We agree that the combination of light hitting the various crinkles in the balloon is what makes it look so oddly shaped in the sky. But is it an H or maybe a number? We'll leave that up to you to decide.
June 24th, 2020. It's a tranquil summer evening in Cypress, Texas, just outside of Houston. A woman is relaxing in her backyard when suddenly something strange appears over the horizon. She quickly takes out her phone and captures this. 5 glowing orange lights shimmer above the rooftops. But take a closer look. They also seem to fade away, then reappear seconds later.
I've never seen anything like it. They're like going in weird shapes. They keep twinkling and going out.
She records for almost a minute. Then the lights begin to gradually disappear until only one remains.
It is so weird.
Could this be an extraterrestrial sighting? According to journalist MJ Banias, it turns out Texas, and especially Houston, is no stranger to UFOs.
Houston has about 80 UFO sightings a year where they're documented and recorded. In fact, adding to the intrigue behind this video, the witness claimed that there were many other smaller lights that her camera was unable to pick up.
But as Houston is an important NASA hub, there could be another explanation, one that's homegrown and just as fascinating.
In 2016, a reporter uncovered some archived footage where the military was hiring a contractor to develop some novel aircraft that potentially revolutionized aviation or jet technology. One was called the Dynafan, and one was called the aerokinetic lift. We need to remember that in the 1960s, the Soviet Union was engaged in a sort of arms race against the United States. So who could develop the best aviation technology?
Has Houston returned to its Cold War roots as a flight technology hub?
It could be possible that what we're seeing in this video is maybe some sort of new aircraft.
What have we got here? A UFO? New NASA secret technology? Artemis is NASA's nearly $100 billion program to return to the moon, with the goal of landing humans as soon as 2024. Houston and the Johnson Space Flight Center are playing a key role to achieve that goal. Is it possible we've caught a glimpse of something to come? Let's see what our experts have to say.
We begin with military aviation expert Tim McMillan. Is the answer the most obvious? Could these be airplanes or helicopters?
In order to stay in flight, airplanes have to maintain a forward momentum, and we don't see the type of movement that I would expect from airplanes. A helicopter can hover in place, but typically if we're talking about helicopters, you would see a green or red warning lights that would determine on what side the helicopter, so you know if it's approaching or going away from you. We don't see that.
If it's not a known aircraft, what about an unknown one? Could this be an experimental NASA project? McMillan isn't so sure.
They definitely do test some platforms at Johnson in Texas, but at the same time, it's obviously operating within the Earth's atmosphere. That's a little out of the purview of what NASA does.
Next, we go to astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio.
When we look at these, the color is this orange color. That's kind of a dead giveaway. Orange is the color of a flame, and they're flickering, and flames flicker as well.
In an earlier episode, we brought you another story from Texas of what we believe to be nighttime skydivers with flares. Could this be the same thing?
A skydiver jumps out of a plane, and what happens is they light up their flare, but something happens with them. They're leaving a trail behind them, and we would have seen these things dropping down. In the time that she videotaped this, we would have seen the drop, and we do not.
Instead, D'Antonio believes it's the fact that these lights are going up that solves the mystery.
So my feeling in looking at these is that we're actually looking at what are called sky lanterns. They last 15 to 20 minutes max. They do tend to fade out, and as you can see, it goes from several lights in the sky to just one remaining. So I think that we're actually seeing several of them that were launched.
So, our verdict? Sky lanterns. But if you're determined to see aliens and interested in a good investment, head to Houston quickly. One survey found that Houston ranks 4th on the list of the best places in the United States to buy a home if you want to see UFOs.
October 17th, 2021. United Flight 267 is making its way from Boston, Massachusetts to Denver, Colorado. At 8:50 a.m. local time, the plane is about to cross over Lake Michigan when a passenger noticed something amiss in the morning sky. The cell phone video shows hazy fields below, and in the center of the frame, a white tic-tac-shaped object moving from left to right in a straight, steady path. Science writer Amy Teitel says it's the oblong shape that intrigues her the most.
One of the things that really jumps out in this video is the shape of whatever this object is. That it has that kind of tic-tac shape is very reminiscent of other UAP or UFO sightings in recent years.
In fact, it's that odd shape that was also witnessed in what is now considered one of the most famous and important UFO videos ever recorded.
The first sighting came from pilot Chad Underwood, who was flying off the USS Nimitz on November 14th, 2004. What he saw was an object that he described as looking vaguely tic-tac shaped, and he coined the term tic-tac UFO. And ever since that first sighting, which has been released to the public from the Pentagon, there's been a slew of sightings of similarly tic-tac shaped UFOs.
Teitel also points out that the location where this video was allegedly recorded is in an area notorious for bizarre and mysterious events.
The Michigan Triangle is drawn between the cities of Ludington and Benton Harbor in Michigan and Manitowoc in Wisconsin. The earliest instance of a ship disappearing was actually in 1891, when a schooner went across the lake and disappeared overnight with 7 sailors on board. And then there was a Northwest Airlines flight that disappeared over Lake Michigan in 1950. And ever since, there have been theories that some disturbance or something over Lake Michigan causes strange things to happen.
So we've got the Michigan Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, and there is another area known as the Alaska Triangle, which also lays claim to strange disappearances. What is it about these areas that wreak havoc on planes and ships? Some have theorized magnetic interference, and in the case of Bermuda, even methane gas emissions from the ocean floor. But did one passenger capture a glimpse into the mystery surrounding the Michigan Triangle? We'll let our experts make the call.
First up, physicist Matthew Shadagas compares the object seen in the video to what was seen in the Nimitz footage released by the Pentagon in 2020.
The coloration and shape, at least superficially, appear to be similar. But it does not appear to exhibit any strange velocity or acceleration that are associated with the Nimitz Tic Tac encounter and similar famous Navy UFO incidents.
Shadagas also warns that due to the low resolution and the limitations of modern digital zoom cameras, the object may not be exactly as it appears.
We cannot definitively say that the object is tic-tac or elliptically shaped, given that we don't know whether it's even in perfect focus, because it may not always be possible to have everything crystal clear with crisp edges in perfect focus.
So if this isn't a tic-tac UFO, and may not even be tic-tac shaped, what is it?
We don't see a whole lot of detail, but we can surmise based on its speed and the potential direction that his aircraft is going, that this was a passing by of another aircraft below them.
But if it's just another aircraft, why doesn't it have wings, propellers, or any of the other standard features associated with any known flying machine?
My gut feeling is that because the resolution is not good and because the wing color kind of blends in with the surrounding terrain. There are some hints in the video. We can see a little notch below here, which might be part of a wing root of a commercial aircraft. So the back end could be where the tail of the plane is, and this notch could be where the wing is coming away.
So if it's just an airplane, why does it look like a white Tic Tac?
Many commercial aircraft are white, and the reason they use that titanium white is because it reflects a lot of the sunlight back, keeps the interior cool, climate controlled. So that is something we would expect to see. The wings are silver, and that silver or aluminum color is many times not visible on days where the sun is not out. And this is one of those days that is somewhat overcast.
But we try not to rely on hunches around here. So based on D'Antonio's conclusions, we checked out the flight data, and there was indeed another plane, Delta 2474 passing United 267 in the opposite direction at the same time and place where this video was recorded.
We may not be seeing all the details. I don't see anything out of the ordinary for a passing commercial aircraft.
Our verdict? The evidence all points to the theory that this is a commercial airplane. It just looks like a Tic Tac because of the camera lens, the sunlight, and the color of the plane. Spy satellites, stealth fighters, the atomic bomb. These were all once top secret weapons programs. Makes you wonder, what other secret technology is the US military working on now? And could they be working with allies from another planet? According to one foreign government, this video proves it.
September 2018, the Mediterranean Sea. An F-18 is approaching the deck of the carrier USS Ford. It looks like a pinpoint precise landing. But then,
as it goes to touchdown, we actually see a triangular-shaped UFO, like something that would be right out of an alien movie. And you're like, whoa, let's rewind that.
the object definitely doesn't look like any known military aircraft. And that triangle shape, that means something.
Historically, UFOs have been certain types of shapes. You've got cigar UFOs, saucer UFOs, and triangle UFOs. So the fact that there was a triangle UFO on this aircraft carrier, that really sent the UFO community into a frenzy.
The USS Ford video becomes more than clickbait. It becomes international news. The Iranian state media declares it proof that the US is plotting with aliens to take over the world. And even when this official version of the video surfaces, same plane, same ship, but no UFO, people aren't convinced.
Some are wondering, is this original video really the original video? Or did they edit out the triangular-shaped UFO to keep us from knowing that they actually are harboring alien spacecraft?
The U.S. military's so-called black budget for military research and covert ops is estimated at about $50 billion a year. Is this video proof of your tax dollars at work? Let's check in with our experts.
Science writer and forensic video analyst Mick West notices two things right away. First, look at those shadows.
The sun's rays are all parallel. They're all the same angle, like that helicopter angle. But if we go to here, it actually needs to rotate to there. So they've put the shadow at the wrong angle. These all have an angle like this, and these have an angle like that.
Then he stabilized the footage, keeping the deck fixed.
We can see the object kind of jiggles around. Everything else is staying nice and solid, but this is doing a little dance on the deck, which is because they haven't properly registered the motion tracking with the deck at a sub-pixel level.
Oh, and just one more thing.
It looks not just remarkably, but identically like a toy model kit of what is called the TR-3B. This particular aircraft is identical to the model that is for sale.
McMillan says videos like this aren't all fun and games. When they get exploited by hostile governments, they sow mistrust and anger towards the U.S. military. That's a common tactic in information warfare. So, our verdict? Hoax. And perhaps not such a harmless hoax. Independence Day is now associated with alien invasion thanks to the Hollywood blockbuster by the same name. Recently, one of our very own viewers says he saw more than just fireworks on July 4th. And he sent us a video that has us asking, are UFOs somehow attracted to colorful aerial explosions like we are?
Chatsworth, California, July 4th, 2018. John Lopez is celebrating with his family.
Every year we go out in our backyard because we're able to see the fireworks.
But instead of pyrotechnics, they see something far more startling. These lights.
Kind of look like fireballs just floating around in the sky, and then like different ones kind of appeared out of nowhere.
Look closer. The lights swoop, flicker on and off, and seem to hover for more than 30 minutes. And what makes it even stranger? This is the second 4th of July in a row that John has seen them.
Mom, the
UFOs are back. I swear to God. I swear.
They're back. That's the trip. Damn.
So everyone was kind of shocked to see that.
It left the Lopez family wondering, what had they seen and why does it recur on the 4th? Journalist and author Alexis Brooks is one of the leading authorities on UFO encounters.
We've heard many stories of UFOs showing up repeatedly to individuals, but the fact that it was at the same time and in the same place, I haven't heard too often. You wonder if the fireworks display may have actually attracted these anomalous objects to the scene.
Brooks wonders why the UFOs appear specifically on the 4th.
Are they attracted to the light in the sky that the fireworks portray? Do they want to hide themselves in the midst of fireworks?
Professor of anthropology Michael Masters notes there's a spike in UFO sightings on the 4th and brings up a theory that they could be trying to figure out exactly what we're doing.
It sort of conjures up ideas of this galactic zoo model that we're being watched by these otherworldly beings fascinated by this strange ritual of independence where we explode these bombs in the air.
But Independence Day has been around for 200 years. Why are the UFOs only showing up to watch now? One theory is that we've only recently become interesting as a species, now that we're building space stations and supercomputers. Let's see what our experts think of John's video.
We did detect several consistent signatures across the video recordings, both made using similar make and model devices. So there is no evidence that we detected that these files were manipulated.
So the videos are legit, but could they be picking up your typical 4th of July light show?
I don't detect similarities with what I would expect to see from fireworks, because fireworks are a momentary lapse of light in the sky. They explode and then they vanish. There's just simply no evidence of that in these recordings.
Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio looks for other explanations, like planes or sky lanterns.
Aircraft have to have Federal Aviation Administration mandated lighting. We don't see that here, so I'm ruling out an aircraft. The sky lantern is slow and moves on the prevailing winds in the sky. These objects are not doing that. They're moving any which way they want. And so that rules out sky lanterns.
Our aviation expert, Tim McMillan, considers if the objects could be flares.
If there are flares fired from an aircraft, you would see them spread out. I would say flares would be pretty unlikely.
And finally, there's always the possibility of drones.
Could someone be operating a drone swarm? Maybe. Drones operate off of battery power. And so if you're operating a very high-powered, high-illumination light, that's less time that your drone is going to be able to stay in the air.
Our experts can only say these lights might be drones, but they can't be certain. So for now, our verdict, these are genuine UFOs. So maybe we are truly living in the land of the free, or we could just be part of a galactic zoo, entertaining the ETs. We've told you before about Lake Superior and its long history of wicked storms, shipwrecks, and anomalous sightings. We'll add this to the list, a close encounter between a Great Lakes freighter and a UFO.
June 2019, Eric Rentamaki is in search of a unique rock called Uperlights that he discovered. It can only be found using a specific black light.
I'm probably one of the most famous rock hounds in the world.
Suddenly, very different glowing lights in the air over the lake catch his eye. Let's push in. It looks like two objects are flying perfectly in line with each other, or they could be two lights on a large object we can't see.
This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
The lights make no noise, and watch this. One passes directly over a ship.
It's a 1,000-foot iron ore freighter, to give you some reference on the size with that video.
When Eric checks in with the freighter, they report that they didn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary. Eric watches the orbs for almost 2 hours, and then they seem to start watching him.
Yeah, it's moving towards us. Like real fast moving towards us.
Author Alexis Brooks has heard of UFOs trying to make a connection with humans.
This we see quite often in UFO footage where the light will become more illuminated, almost as if there's a communication going on between this object and the individual that's watching it. So this to me is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
In a prior episode, we discussed the sighting of an alleged ghost ship on Lake Superior. That turned out to be a mirage of a nearby island. Is there some other optical illusion at play here? Let's check in with our ace video analyst.
Regular viewers will know Michael Primo as our video forensic analyst.
I did not detect any evidence to support that this was added into the video recording, that this information was created by computer imagery.
So the video is real, but Primo says the camera's image quality is poor.
We have a camera that's essentially not recording as accurately as we would expect when you point it into the sky and try to capture this information.
Next, astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio examines whether the orbs could be something man-made.
One keeps fading in and out. We're not seeing any blinking lights that are mandated by the FAA, so we know that they're not aircraft. It's not impossible that they might be drones. However, one thing to know about drones is they actually have their own set of lights, and an orange light is not typically one of them.
And note that Eric tracked these orbs far longer than any consumer-grade drone can fly. Aviation analyst Tim McMillan wonders if it might be the most obvious culprit of all.
The planet Venus is very commonly mistaken for UFOs because at certain times of the year it can be extremely bright. However, this object is giving off kind of an orangish glow, and frankly, it appears to be much larger than even Venus at its largest points would look.
D'Antonio thinks the object's orange glow is the key evidence.
To me, this object matches a sky lantern profile. It'll get dimmer and brighter, and it'll start to flicker and finally go out.
But what could cause the objects to seem to approach and then retreat from the beach?
Cell phone camera footage is really hard, especially at night where you have a black sky and a singular point-like object. And what'll happen is the camera will try to focus on it. It's called focus hunting or focus seeking. And it will go big and get bloated and then shrink down again as it tries to focus. And somebody could mistake that for an object racing toward them and then racing away.
But just because the camera can't hold focus on the orbs doesn't explain what they are. And Eric and his clients saw them for over 2 hours, far longer than sky lanterns can stay aloft.
It is categorically a UFO in that it's unidentified.
This was not a hoax. And while it might not be an alien craft, it remains a genuine, unidentified object. What's for certain is that Eric Rentamaki is still out there hunting Uper-like rocks and now UFOs. Happy hunting, brother.
May 15th, 2021. Hamid Vitalis is walking along the Brooklyn Promenade on his way to work at his freestyle rap channel when he looks out over the Manhattan skyline, whips out his phone, and captures this.
And I'm over here on the promenade looking at some going on. And when I looked at the phone, I saw 3 dots. So I looked up in the sky. I said, hold up, wait a minute. They were basically sitting in a solid pyramid formation.
3 orbs of light hover in the sky. They appear to be stationary. Then a plane appears from the left, passing across the sky toward the orbs.
And right when that plane came, that's when they started darting off. Yo, where'd they go? And only one stayed, and then the one darted off right in my face. And also I was like, well, hold up. Wait a minute. What did I just witness, y'all?
Let's play that back, zoomed in and slowed down. The 3 orbs form a triangle. They seem to hover right over Manhattan as a plane, those small moving lights, approaches them from below. And 2 vanish in an instant.
Where'd the lights go? Yo, where'd they go?
And then the 3rd slowly dims away. Why would UFOs be so attracted to the flavor New York is delivering?
Some people believe UFOs go to where all the action is because they pick up on the energy. Well, like moths, they're attracted to the light.
UFO sightings doubled in New York City in 2020. One theory is that in the pandemic, people were taking the time to check out the night sky. The other obvious reason could be that UFOs come here to observe more frequently when our planet is in crisis. Our experts are in a New York state of mind. Let's see what they think.
Mark D'Antonio says Hamet's video's metadata is consistent with camera phones. He thinks it's authentic and unaltered, but he doesn't see anything special in their shape.
Well, any 3 points makes a triangle. So if you're going to see 3 objects in the sky, you're always going to see some form of triangle.
D'Antonio quickly runs through what he thinks the orbs could and couldn't be.
If they were helicopters, then we would expect them to have their own recognition lights. They don't. Now, could they be drones? I don't believe that's what we're looking at. You'll notice that they're also really, really orange. What I see is what could be a classic case of a sky lantern.
Our aviation analyst, Tim McMillan, has a very different idea about what they are.
I think the biggest problem with them being sky lanterns is the fact that how bright they appear to be.
McMillan thinks the bright lights from the big city would drown out those from a drone or a sky lantern. He believes the answer is just a matter of perspective.
It's extremely difficult to judge the distance, height, altitude of aircraft. And when you're just looking at a couple of bright lights in the sky, it's even more difficult.
There were flights arriving at New York's LaGuardia Airport roughly every 10 minutes that night. And McMillan wonders if these are landing lights that are much farther apart than they appear.
Oftentimes, you can see these lights up to 100 miles away. And so I think we're looking at here is a series of aircraft that are coming in on an approach to the airport there with their landing lights on. It's giving this illusion that they're in this triangular pattern, or because they're at different altitudes as they're coming in.
There are over 3,000 flights in and out of New York City airports most days, and if these are 3 planes, they are probably about 5 miles apart from each other as they approach for landing. Their lights would easily be visible from Brooklyn. But how could they seem to disappear?
It may actually be that the aircraft have turned and banked, so they're no longer facing them directly.
Both D'Antonio and McMillan are pretty confident about their conclusions, but we're going to go with McMillan. Planes are far brighter and more numerous than sky lanterns over New York. Hamet is shooting video for his rap channel most nights, so if he discovers any more freestyle in UFOs, we'll drop the knowledge right here. In a previous episode, we debunked this viral UFO video out of Miami as a fake, in part because there was only one witness.
What the is that? Holy.
Now we look to the Florida skies again. This time we have lots of witnesses. And thankfully, one was a loyal viewer who sent us his own video.
February 9th, 2021, Southern Florida. Stuart Eck is on the road when a flash of light makes him pull over. It's not the police, it's this.
Awesome, it's sunrise.
A large white plume unfurls across the sky, growing larger and larger. He's not frightened, but he is amazed.
You see the shockwave go out? Oh, wow, awesome!
I looked over and it was a giant flame in the sky.
Take another look. As the light passes over Stuart, it leaves behind a massive trail.
It ballooned out like it was exploding or something very different was going on. And it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life.
Not everyone Stuart talked to was as smitten with the object.
Unbelievable.
It scared a lot of people to death, thinking it was some type of weapon coming in from outer space.
Florida is a UFO hotspot. It's actually second only to California. There have been 7,000 sightings of UFOs in Florida since 1998.
But UFOs are consistently reported to fly without leaving visible exhaust or contrails. And there's another theory, a very human, high-tech weapon reported to leave a distinctive exhaust trail. The Chinese military already claims to have developed something called a hypersonic missile. As the name suggests, it travels at 5 times the speed of sound at low altitude. That's a game changer because such a weapon could make it from the human missile silos in central China to Washington, D.C., evading radar and existing air defense systems until it is already well over U.S. airspace. And American nuclear submarines reportedly now have their own hypersonic missile, dubbed the Sea Dragon. So that might be what Stuart witnessed. Another theory? This is some new rocket being developed by a space entrepreneur like Elon Musk. Notice how both this 2017 SpaceX launch and the one in Stewart's video have glowing contrails due to an effect you may have seen in an earlier episode about a suspected Chinese rocket. While it's dark on the ground, the rocket and its contrails are high up enough to be illuminated by the sun, even though it's over the horizon. But exactly what sort of rocket, missile, or other craft could be creating the huge exhaust trail in Stewart's video is a mystery.
SpaceX's Falcon 9 has become the most flown operational U.S. rocket, reaching orbit 24 times in 2020. So could this be another Elon Musk venture, or is there something else more troubling going on?
First, astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio considers if this could be a jet going supersonic.
When the jet approaches the sound barrier, you'll see a condensation front along the front of the jet.
In moist air, a speeding plane creates low-pressure areas where water condenses in a vapor cone. As the plane speeds up, the cloud moves down the body. And when the plane breaks through the sound barrier, it outraces the water droplets and the cone disappears.
What we're seeing here, though, is a continuous plume that's persistent. So this is definitely not a supersonic jet.
Our aviation expert, Tim McMillan, thinks he can narrow it down further.
That teardrop shape and that contrail there, that is characteristic of some type of rocket or potentially a missile test.
But when McMillan checks the SpaceX launch schedule, he rules out any Elon Musk-related UFOs. So could this be a new weapon system, like the Sea Dragon?
The U.S. is just now kind of getting into the hypersonics game and trying to develop more operational hypersonic platforms.
When D'Antonio digs deeper, he finds the U.S. military had tested submarine-launched missiles in the area that day. But the military won't say what exactly was launched.
If it was a missile test of some kind, it's probably a missile that they don't want you to know about.
Despite the strange appearance, we're calling this one a rocket or missile launch. But what rocket or missile, we may never know. What's clear is that the U.S. is in a race to develop unstoppable hypersonic missiles. So we may be witnessing one of the very first tests.